There's no chance that you're active in the Barndominium and pole barn world and don't know who Pole Barn Guru is.
An almost 600-page book that basically tells you how to do anything you could possibly conceive of within our scope. Very few people are willing to truly DIY.
I guess some people would scratch their head like, why in the world would I bring you on my show to talk about Barndos? Because they would see you as a competitor. But in my mind, I don't see that as competition. I see it as community. I promise you, right now, there's someone that just heard us say this and they're already infuriated, right?
Oh, yeah.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the Barndo Show. Today, I've got an incredible guest, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Pole Barn Guru, Mike, all the way down from Fargo or North Dakota. Where are you from, Mike?
I'm actually from South Dakota, 100 miles south of Fargo.
Oh, the bigger cities.
Fargo is the big city. You plan your trips from where I live. When you live in a county that's roughly 40 miles by 60 miles and has a population of 10,000, you plan things.
Yeah, you have to be a man of planning. Well, there's no chance that you're active in the Barndominium and pole barn world and don't know who Pole Barn Guru is. So I was super excited when you decided to make this an in-person interview.
Well, and it's great because it's a great day here in South Carolina.
I know. It's like 90 degrees outside and I have a hoodie on.
It is warm. Fortunately, my truck has air conditioning.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you rolled up in a 56 Chevy?
1950 Chevy pickup.
1950 Chevy pickup. I'm standing outside on the phone with someone and I see this classic truck pull up in the driveway. I was like, no way is that you, but it was. It
was, yeah. No, it's a couple of weeks ago, I rolled up to Morton Building's head office in that pickup, too. And yeah, I got some eye rolls at that one.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm so excited that you made the trip out and get to hang out with me for a couple hours here while we talk through Barndominiums and pole barns and all the ins and outs and all the good stuff. So just take a minute and introduce yourself, talk about who you are and what you do.
Now, well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me here. Really appreciate that. And I have a great deal of admiration for what you and your team have been doing. I think it's fabulous for the industry. It's fabulous for those that are ending up with your homes that you're putting up. I think it's fabulous. My name is Mike, and I have been known as the Pole Barn Guru for 15 years now. When the housing crunch hit in 2007, 2008, we, of course, did what everybody does. We went on a cruise ship. But the cruise ship was the Internet Marketers Cruise, and we spent a week not sleeping picking the brains of 400 of the top internet marketers on the planet. And we were going to be tourists afterwards. And instead, we locked ourselves in our hotel room and took our 5,000 pages of notes, went through them, and looked at what we could do to implement some of those things into our business. So that's where the moniker, the Pole Barn Guru, came from. Some of my background, my grandfather was a builder in northeastern Washington in the late 1920s, going into the 30s. And he raised 6 boys who were also all builders. And I used to have old timers come into my office and they'd tell me stories about my grandpa's job sites and how there are all these little kids running around with hammers. Because that was the crew. My dad always swore that if he caught either myself or my little brother with a hammer in our hands, he would wallop us alongside the head. But it didn't work out. We ended up going into construction anyhow. I went to school in architecture at the University of Idaho, and I like to tell people that when they told me I was going to have to learn to golf, I decided I didn't want to be an architect. Ended up by fluke into the roof truss industry in 1977. I was working for a contractor that I was his pickup crew, and I got to do things like my uncle Vern had framed a custom home for him, and so being the pickup crew when the client wanted the dining room window moved a foot to the left, well, I was the guy that went out and tore everything apart and moved the window a foot to the left. Went back in the office. Boss said, "Hey, great job." Came in the next morning. "What are we doing today? Remember that window you moved yesterday?" "I remember that window." "Well, now they decided they want it a foot to the right from where it was originally." Like, okay, I get paid the same. So went out, tore it all apart again, moved the window. It's all done. Go in the next morning. Blaine goes, "Hey, customer thinks you did a great job. I think you did a great job. They want the window back to where it was in the beginning." I'm like, "You have got to be kidding me. You cannot possibly pay me enough money to be moving this window back and forth and back and forth." A friend of mine was working at a truss plant in Spokane, and he said, "You got to come down. They're hiring. It's indoor work, so you don't have to, be in the rain and the sludge and the heat, whatever." And so went down at coffee break one morning, then put in an application. And they said, "Well, when can you go to work?" I said, "Well, when would you like me to come to work?" And they go, "How about now?" And I said, "Well, I kind of have a job. How about you let me, go quit that one? I'll start at noon." So they put me to work as a sawyer, cutting truss components. And the deal was that if you could cut 1,000 pieces in a day, that you could go home and they'd pay you for the rest of the day. Well, my daddy brought us up with a work ethic where, if work started at 7 you were working. It didn't mean you showed up and you rolled out the cords and you had some coffee and a cigarette and a coffee and maybe you're working by 8. You were working at 7. And I didn't smoke, didn't drink coffee. So everybody went on break in the morning. I just keep working. It paid me to work. Lunchtime came, scarfed in a sandwich, back to work. So it didn't take me long where I was cutting 1,000 boards at noon. And I just kept working. And they're like, "Well, you can go home." "No, you paid me for 8 hours. You're going to get 8 hours work out of me." So after 3 weeks of that, they called me into the office one day. And they said, "Well, we have some choices here for you. We have another truss plant that's 25 miles away in Coeur d'Alene. And if you would like that opportunity, we'll let you go over there and you can work in the shop. And over the course of the next year, you'll have an opportunity probably to work into the office. Or behind door number 2, the other 2 sawyers are going to kill you." So I said, "Well, death or get a job 2 miles away from where I lived anyhow, I'll take door 1. So went over there, started work, and it was a year before I got out in the shop. They put me in the office. They'd never had a salesperson. And I was blessed at 19 years old. The partner that managed that business let me do everything except write the paychecks. I got to hire, I got to fire, got to schedule everything, did all the sales, bought truckloads of lumber. I mean, it was an incredible experience. And I'm thankful to this day that I had that great opportunity. Eventually, I did get to work in the plant because I sold so many trusses that I had to run the plant around the clock. So I volunteered to work graveyard shifts. So I go home after working in the office, sleep till 10 o'clock at night, get up, come in, run graveyard shift, and then go to the office. And weirdly enough, is my shift with only half as many people as the other 2 shifts, we built more than the other 2 shifts put together. But I told the guys I got to run the hydraulic press to press in the metal truss plates. And I said, "If your hands are in the way, when I come to press that plate, I'm taking your fingers off." And they believed me. And they absolutely hated me until payday came and their bonus checks were like 5 times more than what they made for their regular pay. So then they thought I was okay. I ran into a challenge since we were in Idaho, and in 1979, inflation was hitting. I know that nobody understands inflation today, but in Idaho, you couldn't have a mortgage that was double digits. And so our housing just stopped. I went somewhere else looking for work. I mean, I still had the job, but wasn't doing anything and being productive. And so interviewed at 3 places. The last one was in Salem, Oregon, where I got hired to run a truss plant for a big lumber yard. And they had a reman operation. They did pre-hung doors, built cabinets. And they had it going on. And so I came in, went to work the first day, and my predecessor was there, and the deal was that he'd stay there for a month until I got used to the way it all worked. And so at noon the first day, he goes, "Well, son, it's been nice knowing you. Have fun. You're on your own." There were some shocks involved there. I came from a land where everything was kiln-dried lumber, and these people building everything out of green lumber, which that was unusual. Took a tour of the yard, and they had all these trusses out there, and my predecessor had convinced them that standard and better lumber and 2 and better lumber were the same thing. A whole yard full of trusses built out of standard and better 2x4s. It was terrifying. I did turn that around. We started doing things the right way, and even though the housing thing caught up with us in January of 1980, and my truss plant, we had 3 orders the whole month, and I'm like, man, we got to do something here, because I'd like to eat, I'd like to keep my crew busy. But I looked at those 3 orders, and there was one thing that was consistent about every one of them. They were all for pole barns. I'm like, I don't know what a pole barn is, but these guys know something we don't know. So I found an old-time pole builder and picked his brain. He goes, it's really pretty simple. He goes, you put a 6x6 every 12 feet. You slap some 2x6s on the top. You put truss on each end, double truss every 12 feet, some 2x6s on the edge between, and you're all good. That was the sum of his knowledge. So, okay, so ran some material lists, ran some ads for pole building kits, and sure enough, people started buying them. I hardly even knew what they were. By April, we had so much going on that we had construction crews too, and by June, I was running my truss plant double shift, building trusses for pole barns. Like, this is just an incredible thing. So I was a little on the aggressive side, and the guy that owned the place had announced he was going to retire. Now, at 22 years old, I knew it all. and I was happy to go in and say, boss, I hear you're retiring, and if so, I would like to run this $20 million in 1980 operation. Well, he had a 25-year-old son that got the job, and I got to go find some other employment. So I went to McMinnville to a truss plant out there, and I brought along some of my truss customers that I had developed, and we started selling pole building kits out there too. Sold a lot of them. They had made the mistake of using Uncle Sam for a lender. When you don't pay payroll taxes, Uncle Sam does not like that. And so they ended up closing it down, and I was terribly depressed, loading up our inventory and shipping it back to the people that we had bought it from. Took my last check, paid all my bills current, had $50 left, and I went to the nickel ads in Portland, Oregon. And if I paid for 1 week's ads up front, they'd give me 3 more weeks in credit. So I was in business selling pole barn kits. Now, keep in mind, I had no inventory. I had no location. I had nothing but me. And I sold 3 buildings in the first week and went out and got down payments. And a friend of mine who was in real estate found some property just south of Portland on Old Highway 99E that I could lease 6 acres with a little stick frame garage for $400 a month. And the Chevrolet dealer had ordered in a delivery truck from one of the local lumber yards, and the lumber yard decided they didn't have the need for it. So they financed me on that truck, and I was in the pole barn kit delivering business. So that's what started getting me to here. That business I started in 1981, sold it in 1989 to the current owner. We did 6,600 buildings in 13 states, and it was time for me to retire. And so sold it, moved back to Spokane, where I grew up at, and once again realized that I did not want to play golf. So my little brother and I decided we're going to become pole barn builders. Hired us some crews, started selling buildings. The first 5-6 months sold about 100 buildings. And then we said, well, we need things like, a lumber yard and a truss plant. So we opened up a lumber yard and built ourselves a truss plant. And in the 1990s, I was the most prolific post-frame builder in the Pacific Northwest. At one time, I had 35 crews building buildings in 6 states. I tell people that's why my forehead is flat and my hair is thin. Even having, we had really good crews and we paid them really well. But even at that, it seems like once a year, your best crew would have a building that everything went wrong. And you'd talk to them about it afterwards and, what happened? And they go, we don't know. Just nothing was right.
I can relate to that on several levels.
It happens. So anyhow, been with Hanson Pole Buildings now since 2002, since the inception, and we have provided post-frame building kits to do-it-yourselfers in all 50 states. Some states, lots of them. Washington State alone, we've done over 1,000 buildings, and it's been extremely rewarding. We usually attract people that are overly curious about how things work, and they want to do unique and interesting things, stuff that nobody else will do. We do a lot of multi-story buildings, which lots of people don't want anything to do with. We have evolved our business recently. For 22 years, we outsourced almost everything. We outsourced, besides steel, roofing, and siding, the lumber and the trusses. And COVID changed a lot of things. Actually, the change started when the housing crunch hit, and 2/3 of the prefabricated wood roof truss plants in America closed. And as housing recovered, the production did not come along with it. Everybody got burned. And so they said, well, instead of increasing production, we'll just tell people it's going to take 4 to 6 months for trusses and we'll charge them more for it. So when COVID hit, they looked at, well, I'm paying this truss designer $50,000, $60,000 a year to design my trusses. Everybody's going to work from home, so we're going to hire a kid in his parents' basement in Malaysia to design our trusses because he'll work for $1.50 an hour. Well, the problem with that is that the kid was a gamer, and he doesn't know what a 2x4 is. He just knows that if it says it works, it must be good. So instead, we just got ugly truss designs. They're totally impractical. They'd be wrong. Our requests were very specific as to load situations, and it was just not a good thing. So it'd take you 4 to 6 weeks to get a preliminary truss drawing that was wrong, back and forth to get it corrected. Once it was corrected, you have to wait 2, 3, 4 months for trusses at exorbitant prices. Well, I sat down last fall and I'm running some of the numbers, and I'm like, I'm thoroughly convinced that for what we can save in trusses, I can pay to ship buildings from our location in South Dakota to anywhere in the country. And I was right. Well, and if you have to have the inventory to build the trusses, you might as well bring in the inventory to ship the buildings. So we've got about 500,000 board feet of lumber in our yard right now. And our managing partner, Eric, is wondering if he was sane when he told me that that we could go ahead and do this. But it has allowed us to do lots of great and wonderful things.
Well, talk about earning the name Pole Barn Guru, right? Like, so you got a pedigree inside of this, and for us, starting out, with the company, I ran into you in some of the online communities, and I've reached out to you numerous times to pick your brain on various things and different kind of design. I think one of the first times I ever reached out to you, I had a guy here locally, actually not very far from the studio we're sitting in right now, and then he was wanting to build this monstrosity of a building. Then he came up with the idea of putting a live load second floor in a 62-foot span. And I was trying to figure out how in the world we could accommodate that with wooden trusses and what kind of poles would be necessary. And so I've leveraged your expertise numerous times. And, so Hanson, you guys do the whole shebang, the whole kit for pole barns and people in Barndo world and everything like that. And I guess some people would scratch their head like, why in the world would I bring you on my show to talk about Barndos? Because they would see you as a competitor. But in my mind, I don't see that as competition. I see it as community. So like there's things that you do that I don't do and vice versa. And I think the biggest one of that you hit on is the DIY consumer versus people that hire a builder. We do a very similar type of construction that you do, but different. And so like that, you could take the nuances of what we do and make a multitude of things that we do differently, right? Like we use steel trusses and we, surface mount our poles, and we do things a certain way because it accommodates what we do on a massive scale. But there's a whole group of people that want to do it themselves, and we have people come to us all the time. There's been numerous times where I'll tag you in a comment or something online and be like, we're not your do it yourself, or like we can help, but there's easier ways to do it, because the way we build is not the easiest way to do it. That is for certain. But we're kind of bound by some of the things that we do. It turns out to be a beautiful building. But
it is. I have looked at lots of them online. And I agree. You guys do a great job.
Yeah, but it's when the challenges for us where we started in COVID. We literally were just sitting around like, well, let's just build Barndo and see what happens. And we started, and same thing. We were like looking for suppliers and all this stuff, and the steel truss component was available. And so we built them, and we just started building that way. And then we, had people coming to us wanting to use lenders and all these different things. And we had to dissect that. And like, I can remember sitting across from many of loan officers, and they're going, we don't lend on these. And I'm like, tell me why, and I asked the question, why 7 million times. And I know I need specific answers as to why, and they would tell me, and I would go back and engineer, how to do this and meet that criteria. And then we finally landed on this like post frame hybrid that we do, to where all of our lenders were happy and appeased, and we were able to start offering financing. And then we went from a goal of building 10, and now we build hundreds a year, and it's scaling from there. But it wasn't possible without figuring that out. But let's talk a little bit about this. So somebody's sitting at home, right, and they're like infatuated with Barndos, which is everybody. It seems like
it is.
These communities are. I tell everybody it's like a cult. Like there are so many online communities for Barndominiums. You know, we own several of them that are hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Who have an interest, and and they're like, I can't believe this many people have Barndos. I said, oh no. A small percentage of these people actually have one, but all of them want one, and so they all have questions, and there's so many differing and opposing views, and it's a never ending cycle of who's right and who's wrong, and I do it this way, and then inevitably someone comes along to try to find a more cost effective solution, and they just sell it in the market, and people are uneducated because it's as long as they've been around, it's still a relatively new disruptive type idea in the residential housing community. And so one of the things I love is when you engage with people. So there's a couple things we can dissect here. But in terms of someone sitting at home and they're debating whether or not we're going to DIY it, because that's a huge portion of this industry. Like it's just, it naturally attracts people who are generally pretty handy, versus someone who comes to us and says, do it for me. So and we kind of service all those areas between the two of us. Like we do it yourself, we'll do it with you, or we'll do it for you. What would you give as advice to someone who's considering doing this and trying to do it DIY?
Well, and I want to cover a couple of things. You brought up about 500 subjects here. So, one thing is that you and I, we are not competitors, right? Not at all. And, those that have interacted with me, whether you're a DIYer or somebody that just wants to general contract their own, or they're a contractor, they have found that I will answer any question for anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any difference. Is the thing that I think is most important is I want to see people get structurally sound buildings that they love.
Yep.
And as long as it meets that criteria, then I'm all good with it. I mean, that's the end of the game is, hey, if everybody wins out of it, that's great. And I don't want to see failures. Things fail, it makes us all look bad. And then we get it's kind of like what I call the blowaway carports, even though in our part of the country, they collapse from snow before they blow away.
Right.
But, I see people thinking they can live in those. And when those fall down, then people go, well, those steel covered buildings, they are just no good. And even though we are so far evolved from that, we have to pick up the pieces for those failures. So,
and they're everywhere. We've got people in our market, and literally the name of their company is Carport, and they're like offering Barndominium kits, and I'm thinking,
it's terrifying.
Please don't buy this. And I will say this in our area, and I think it's kind of nationally being adopted. Is municipalities are really starting to step up and have some higher requirements. And especially here, because we have such an influx of people moving from other parts of the country here. We're full, by the way. But
hey, we're full in South Dakota, too. We have lots of cows. We don't need any more people.
But people are flooding in. And so, like, municipalities are starting to restrict and get tighter and tighter and tighter. I mean, there's areas that we build in consistently, and we have to beat our head against the wall with the local municipalities because there's two sides to this. One is they don't understand that at all. If they go out and this inspector is inspecting 1,000 houses and he's got 2 Barndos in the middle of it, they don't care about learning something new. And I get it from their perspective, right?
Yeah,
like
I understand.
This is another thing. I don't know the answers to it. And so we're always battling that. It's uneducation. But the flip side of that is some of these municipalities have made it where it's next to impossible for some of these kind of other structures to be used. But that doesn't stop people from buying it before they realize that. And so we have so many people, and it's getting better. But there was a 2-year period of time where we probably got 20 calls a week. Hey, I bought this building kit. They dropped it off in my front yard, and I need you to come erect it. And I'm like, we don't I don't do that. Like, what did you buy? I mean, and I can remember specifically a client that ended up building with us spent over $90,000 on a kit, a Barndo kit, and it was it's a carport. It was a carport building, and they ended up erecting it on their property, and they use it for a carport, like a garage, a shop, or something. But like, I felt so bad. I mean, it was their cash.
Yeah.
It was all their cash, and like, there's no recourse for them, because unfortunately, a lot of these companies are here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
But let's lean into some of that. Like if there's one thing that I absolutely appreciate when I talk with you or engage with you online, is you always back it up with a fact, right? And so when someone's hearing this, because I promise you right now, there's someone that just heard us say this and they're already infuriated, right?
Oh yeah.
To talk about, because they live in one, or and granted, there are people who live in a part of their country where there is no restrictions to what you can do and what you can't do.
A lot of the country.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that just because they didn't inspect it, that if they had, it would pass. So elaborate a little bit on like these blowaways that we talk about, blowaway carport structures, like why they're not suitable for residential use.
I mean, let's assume for a moment here that you could take that blowaway carport and you can anchor it down to something strong enough so that it doesn't blow away.
Right.
So we'll assume that you can do that, which I'm skeptical of that to begin with, but we'll assume you can do that. So we'll assume you're also somewhere that doesn't snow.
Right.
I mean, we're going to give them total benefit of the doubt here, but you have a building that is put together with normally 2.5-inch square tubing. Now, in order to live in this, hopefully you're thinking that I might want to insulate this so that I don't have to heat and cool everybody in the county. You only have 2.5 inches to work with in the beginning. So even if you're using closed cell spray foam, the best you're going to get is R17 out of the deal. And that in some places that might work for your walls, but tell you what, you get to that roof and you're going to be blowing out a bunch of heat, or a bunch of heat coming back at you. Plus, you have to run things like utilities through those walls. So you got to run wiring through there. You better have some real skinny pipes because you only have 2.5 inches to hide it in. Or you end up having to build a house inside of this shell in order to be able to insulate, to run the utilities, to be able to hang cabinets, to drywall it. It just is defeating. A lot of those blowaway carports are also based upon steel run horizontally, and steel siding is not designed for that. You have laps that are not designed to be run in that direction, and they run the roof that way as well. I can't see it. I take that back. I will see one positive about a blowaway carport. It was cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Outside of that, I can't tell you I see anything positive about it. I mean, I put the blowaway carports in the same category with Quonset huts, although the Quonset huts will stand up.
I'm just, in my mind, I can already feel the comments coming. It's something that again, it's a massive industry. People are making money doing it. So of course they're going to champion it.
And I have no problem with, business, in order to stay in business, needs to make money.
Yep.
So I got no problem with that part of the equation. It's the ones that don't care how they made the money.
Yeah.
They're the same ones that run meth labs. And I realize, these
are the greatest one-liners of all time.
I call things the way they are, and
Yep.
I'm sure that frankly, I piss off a good number of people. It's just the way it is. Yeah. But I do try to give good answers, and I don't know a lot. I know a lot, but my kids will say, "Dad, you know more worthless trivia than anyone we've ever met." but I'm a good researcher. So
Right.
if I don't know something, or know where the source is for it, I'm going to go research until I can get the answer that's the right answer, because I don't want to guide people down some path that is a path of no return. And fortunately, I've made 40 years worth of mistakes already, so that people can learn from my mistakes. They can learn that golfing is one of those things where you hit the ball once and it's like, oh, that was wonderful, I can do this again, and you can't repeat it.
That's right. And if you can, you're making plenty of money.
Yes.
And you're on the pro tour.
yeah. You're one of those few. So, I mean, it's, please, if you're listening to this today, do not buy a blowaway carport to live in. Thank you.
That is your public service announcement. And
Yes.
and the thing is, they get people, I think, sometimes with the idea of a pre-engineered, it's been engineered. It's an engineered building.
Yeah, and there's always some engineer that's willing to risk their career on it.
Yep.
I mean, that's the reality of it. Is there are some really good engineers out there, and I'm thinking probably not very many of them are engineering blowaway carports.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, in addition to these, man, there's so many ways to build Barndominiums, and this is another thing that we deal with all the time. Is like, we'll post a home, and someone will like, that's not a Barndominium at all, and I'm like, okay, don't buy that one.
Yeah,
but
to me, I built my first Barndominium by accident in my backyard 30 years ago, and it started from, I was on a very narrow lake lot that I had inherited from my grandparents, 60 feet wide, 225 feet deep, on about a 45-degree slope. So with the run of the hillside, I had 375 feet a lot. And on the back of this lot, I wanted to put up just a little pole barn garage to put my boat in. Well, a surveyor had swung an arc wrong in the early 50s, and I lived on a point, and on the other side of the point, there was now a lot overlapping my lot by 55 feet. So we went to court over the whole thing, and of course, the people on the other side had title insurance, and I inherited mine, and I didn't. So after spending $50,000 in court to win, I put up the biggest freaking building I could possibly put up. So I put up a 40 by 36 building that from ground to the peak of the roof was 40 feet 6 inches.
I love it.
3 stories with a deck on the roof. And they had to look at that building as long as they were my neighbors.
That's awesome.
But I've always thought, though, that some smart home builders out there that are listening, I'm giving you the clue here right now. Some smart home builder is going to start building tracts full of post frame buildings for homes because they are so efficient to build. I mean, they're incredibly efficient, because for those of you that have delved into like the IRC or the IBC building codes, those are prescriptive codes. It's like a cookbook. They give you a recipe, and as long as you follow the recipe, then everybody's in happy land. You put 2x4 studs on 16-inch centers. You use a single 2x4 bottom plate, a double top plate. You orient your splices here. You use this many nails, to-do. That's great and wonderful. However, it overkills 90% of the cases because it's designed for the worst case scenario within the realm of the code. So you have redundant pieces that are just taking up space. Post-frame construction, we're very efficient. Every piece in that building is doing something structurally. So we don't have all these extra pieces that code says, put in that extra piece and it'll all be good. So we get the efficiencies of material usage, And because we don't have all these pieces that touch the outside wall and the inside wall, we're also incredibly thermally efficient. So we're winning on both of those already. So somebody's going to figure it out. They're going to be the next Lennar or Toll Brothers, and there will be whole subdivisions full of post frame houses.
We're trying to do this, guys. So
yeah, I mean, hey,
if you're listening, back off. No, I'm just playing. No, yeah, we've delved down this road of doing these developments, and it's kind of wild because when we first decided to try it, we were doing these kind of sprawling neighborhoods, 2.5 to 5 acre lots, and we have several of those going right now. But now we have a capital partner and a developer that are like, hey, we had all these B markets get evacuated by national builders. Why don't you come in and do a neighborhood, And so we've kind of explored it from a multitude of different ways. So it's something that we're considering, but I agree with you 100%. It is, it's a super efficient way to build. But what we found in doing it is the end product is so far superior that the efficiency and affordability thing is not even the argument we sell on anymore. We used to sell on make your dream affordable, and now it's affordable, sure, but that's not the biggest advantage. The biggest advantage is our standards are at the top of most people's upgrades.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about just interior comforts. I'm just talking about the actual construction of it itself, because you have 6-inch exteriors, right? And now up where you're at, that's probably a common thing because of how cold it gets. But here in South Carolina, there's not many people, if any, that are building with 2x6 exteriors and 6x6 posts, But because of those posts, we end up with these bigger exterior wall cavities. And then we come in and we foam insulate everything that we do. And so like our value, our efficiencies, the comfort of that house, the quiet, like everybody thinks like it's going to be loud,
No.
And it's so quiet inside of that house. And then the fact that we have a metal roof, we have metal siding, it's easier to maintain.
Oh, without question.
And so we've shifted from trying to sell on affordability, because the easiest thing for another builder to do is to be like, no, I can do it cheaper.
Oh yeah. No, there's always somebody that's willing to cut quality and service for a cheap price. And those really, you've got three facets to the selling of anything that's a major product. Is you've got service, price, quality, and you only get two of them.
Yeah.
So you got to pick the two that you want. Yeah. If you're out there thinking, hey, I'm gonna buy from that cheapest person, you're probably going to get exactly, unfortunately, what you deserved.
Yeah. Well, we decided, after doing this, now again, we're still kind of in infancy. We're toddlers now.
Oh, me too, and I've only done it for 4 decades. So,
yeah, we're in our 3rd year. But what we decided is like as we started mass producing these things, like we saw houses where we allowed downgrades so that we could meet price points, and they're still fine homes. They're completely built to code, or completely whatever. But we also see the best way to do it. And we made a decision internally to say, we will not build that way. If you can't afford it, that's fine. So we do have another division where we just do stick-built homes, right? We have the ability to do stick-built homes. That's fine. Like, I get it. Sometimes you can't afford to get what you're hoping to get, and space is of concern. We do that. We can stick build you a house. It's not a huge piece of what we do. It's not even something that we really push to market. It's just we have this ability. But in our Barndos, we set a standard, and one of our things this year was to be better than ever. And it started with that mentality, and then as we wrapped up Q1, we set a mission for Q2 of set the standard. What is the standard? And narrow all of this stuff down, because one of the hurdles that we encountered was you could do many different things with post-frame construction, right? You can accomplish a lot of things.
Oh yeah, really.
But,
I mean, when it comes to post frame construction, just throwing this out there, and it's outside of even the scope of Barndominiums, is I really believe in my heart of hearts that post frame construction is the most cost effective and efficient permanent structure that you can build within the parameters of what they'll allow us to do, which is going to be 3 stories and 40-foot high walls, or if you sprinkler it, 4 stories and 50-foot high walls. If you're within that and you have a clear span that is 100 foot or less, post frame
is the way.
Is the way to go.
Yep. Which gets us back to, with all that said, we were like, this is what we will do, and this will become our standard. And so we just kind of locked that in. And we had an evacuation process of about $18 million worth of builds that we let walk away because we weren't willing to sacrifice quality for quantity. And a lot of people look at you and think that is absolute lunacy. Why would you do that? But it set us up to where now we have the ability to run so efficiently. And when you go job to job, it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And so we kind of had to transition ourselves because we went from building 10 or 15 a year to hundreds a year. And we're in 3 different states, and I don't even know how many hundreds of counties. Poor Jennifer in our permitting department, she has to work with all those yahoos. But in doing that, we literally leaned into the quality aspect of, you cannot apples to apples build this home cheaper with any other method of construction. Apples to apples, you can't do it.
Yeah, and I agree totally with that. That theory. I mean, a lot of what we do is the same way. I mean, we deal. I hear every day potential clients say, "Well, I could get the exact same building from blah 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 blah," and it's never $100 less. It's always some big number.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I will guarantee it. I will stake my career on that it is not apples and apples. And we've done a lot of the same things, especially now that we control our own lumber. And I mean, some of the things that we have done, we decided that we're going to all glue laminated columns for any roof supporting column in our buildings. Well, and I think that people be hard pressed to say, well, a glue lam is not the best product, because it is. But we took it one step further. The glue lams that are being produced and used by everyone else are products normally of #1 Southern Yellow Pine and or 1650 machine stress rated SPF. We're having all ours built out of 2400 MSR lumber. So we've got columns that are about 60% stronger than the best column that they can buy from anyone else. And it really didn't cost us much more to do it. And the end resultant is that we have the strongest columns in America. We did it with that rationale behind it. It's like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right, and we're going to take it all the way. And I did some exercises. I just took a box building, and I just kept making it first I used like 115 mile an hour wind with a sea wind exposure, so nothing to stop the wind. And I just kept making it 2 feet taller and 2 feet taller and 2 feet taller. And it was amazing that the increments of 2 feet were exactly the same within just pennies, and the pennies of difference was because you needed longer corner trims.
Right.
And I ran up to 22-foot sidewalls. And there was not a penalty for height. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. I kind of like this.
Yeah.
So we take that edge away. And of course, we do so many 2-story buildings that all those people are like, yeah.
Well, let's circle back to DIY.
Okay.
Right? So homeowner, potential builder, somebody's got a dream, right? Everybody wants one, and they're considering DIY as an option. What advice would you give them, other of course than to call you? But what advice would you give them as they're starting to look this out? And from your perspective, what qualifies someone for a great DIY experience versus certain things where they maybe need to GC or call a builder?
I would say that the ideal DIYer is somebody they're not afraid to get their hands dirty, and second is they're willing to learn, because there's a ton of information available to help those people. And in relationship to the DIY thing, when I first started selling post-frame building kits over 40 years ago, almost everybody thought nothing about, hey, sure, no problem. And my plans were like 3 pages of notebook paper, and there's no instructions, and people were out there putting them up.
Yep.
And I mean, it's evolved totally, where our portion of it, which is just the structural part, the building shell, our plans are specific down to, we show every piece on the building and how you connect it and how far apart they are. And we give you an almost 600-page book that basically tells you how to do anything you could possibly conceive of within our scope. But very few people are willing to truly DIY. I'm going to share a secret of why more people should think about this, though. So let's say that somebody is going to come to you or some other builder, and outside of the cost of their land, because whether you have half an acre or 400 acres, it kind of skews that. Running in your utilities, because maybe you're on public water and maybe you need a well, maybe you've got sewer, maybe you've got a septic, maybe you need to do a pretty intricate septic to make it work. Site preparation, because not all of us are on flat level sites, and some of us are on clay, and some of us are on rock, and cost of your permits. Some places, like where I live, $20, you can get a permit to build anything.
Right.
Some places, not so much. California, you buy a car for what the cost of that permit is. A nice car. It's California. So we'll leave those things out. So we'll say that your Barndominium itself, that you would pay a general contractor $300,000. We're just plucking this from the air. I'm just making up these numbers. So, okay. So if you DIY it truly, you're probably going to cut that number in half. Now, granted, you're going to, this is your job. This is what you're doing for the next 12 to 18 months. This is your job. There's a secret to this, though, is that in this scenario, the $150,000 that you didn't pay is that you didn't take out a mortgage for that other $150,000, and you didn't have to pay income tax and Social Security taxes on that $150,000 to have to pay the mortgage. So effectively, the $150,000 you saved there, if it was an instant thing, it's more like $225,000. And now you're thinking, maybe there's something to this. I grew up 3 houses down from where I grew up at. We for a long time were the last house in the neighborhood, but there was a family that lived there for about 2 years, because their dad would build a house, they'd move into it, sell the old house, and he just continued to do this every 2 years. They had a new house to move into. Well, he had figured that same thing out, and he just kept rolling that profit into their next house. They eventually ended up living in a really nice house that was free and clear. So for those people, it's a great way to go, but it's not for everyone.
Well, and I would say, to elaborate a little bit more on that, would be, we get the antithesis of this, right? We get someone who hears the cost savings of DIY Barndominiums, and when they come in to meet with us, they're, even in today, 2024, people will come in with a belief that it shouldn't cost more than $100 a square foot to hire me.
Good luck
to build this home.
Yeah, doesn't happen.
And there's so much misinformation, and I love it. Like, at the end of the day, my goal is for as many people to make their dream come true as possible. And if we're the one, like we have a saying here, and I've said it a million times, is choose us, don't use us. And we onboard clients and we take them through design, pre-spec planning. We do everything. We select everything down to the color of the walls that is going in this house. Everything is pre-selected. We go out and do a site visit. We get all the pre-construction costs. We get all the septic, utilities, everything that's going to go into making this, from construction access to final driveway, all of those costs. And we give them a proposal. And at that point, up until that point, there's no obligation to work with us. If you sign on the dotted line, now we're your builder. Before that, we were your coach, right? We designed your plans. We helped you get all this stuff. And we even tell them, these are your plans. Go talk to other builders. Maybe we're not the right one. You've got to make the best decision for you and your family. And if we drop the ball during this process, in your opinion, we're probably going to drop it over and over again throughout the process. Please go talk to other builders. We want to earn your business, right? We want you to choose us, not just use us because we're like the only name in town. But that approach is, I love that there's an opportunity for people to DIY. I love that there's opportunities for people to hire builders all across this country. I love that there's opportunities to hire people that don't build the way I build. You know, you and I have a common friend down in Texas that builds red iron buildings.
Yeah.
But great dude, I'm satisfied that his home that he would build for you would be fantastic.
Oh, no, hey, if I wanted a red iron building and I was anywhere close to him,
yeah,
hey, not a problem. You know, it's like, you know, because I know that he cares.
That's right.
And I will pay people that care.
Yep.
I mean, that's the reality of it.
But in order for everybody to win, it takes stuff like this, right? Like, you can come on here and tell people, I see it every day. I have your responses memorized by Q. And I even use them with people. Like I've used it to my sales team to say, when someone comes to you with this DIY idea, you can use this. Send them to the website, your frequently asked questions section. Like, you know, based off today's industry specific information, this is what it would cost you to do it yourself, which means I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
This is what it would cost you to general contract this. And this is what it costs you for me to have to do it for you. And build that together. Because collectively, I think we all just want to see everybody win. So to pick back up on the DIY side of things, and then when people should use a builder, like let's elaborate on that a little bit more.
Well, and I'm going to talk about that from a couple points. Is first of all, I see a lot of people that they want a Barndominium, and they want somebody to put up the building shell, and then they're going to finish off the interior themselves because they're thinking that's the easy part. That's the hard part. You write that down. You know, take out your scratch pad and a permanent marker. That's the hard part. The building shell part of it, that's the easy thing. I mean, it's, you know, at least, you know, if you're getting a building from us, we walk you right through the whole thing. Gather up a bunch of friends and keep them sober in a couple of good weekends, and you can have your building shell up. So, you know, I'm afraid that a lot of people are hiring what I would call a building erector to put up a building shell, and they're really not getting what they should get out of the deal, especially in most cases where they let a builder just go run rampant and put any materials that he wants in this building, because as a consumer, the average consumer has absolutely no clue as to what's right or what's wrong. And from 100 yards away, well, lots of things, they look really, really nice, even from 100 feet away, even from maybe 10 to 15 feet away. It's unfortunately, you know, if you could pay me enough to come and do an inspection of that building shell, you'd probably feel really bad that you spent any of that money. And I did an informal survey in one of our social media groups that we run. It's for post frame builders. We don't let Joe Public into the group. And I did a poll, you know, about, you know, why is it that you would or wouldn't put up, you know, somebody's pole building kit? And 60% of them is we can't control the materials, which means I can't take enough shortcuts in here if I have to put up somebody else's kit. But if I control the materials, I can leave out a whole bunch of stuff and nobody will know the difference.
Right.
So if you're going to look at this from an aspect of that you want to GC your building, but only do bits and pieces of it, at least talk to our team about it, because we'll even if you decide to go somewhere else, we'll at least give you enough guidance to know what is right and what direction you should be heading in. And then back to the turnkey part of things.
Well, before we dive deep into that, we'll 100% agree with you on the shell side, because when we're building for people, our goal is 150 to 180 days in and out on a job from permit to door key.
And that's moving right along.
And we have some that are faster. And, when we first started, if we could do it inside of 12 months, we were excited. And, as we got better, expectations rose. But everyone is the best client ever, from concrete to roof. And then the hard work starts, which is all the MEPs and the drywall and the paint and the cabinets and the counters and the flooring and the trim and the things and the punch out and then they feel like they've been building for an eternity. And because, in a 6-month time frame, 5.5 of those were all the things on the inside. So just to elaborate on your shell idea.
And that's where insanity hits.
Yep.
And we'll caution anyone who's going into this, whether you're going to DIY it, you're going to general contract it yourself, or you're going to hire somebody that will do it right. I'm looking at him right now because I know you'll do it right. But regardless of which of those roads you take, at some point in the process you will become insane. It happens. I mean, I have done it myself. Even knowing going into it that I will be insane and telling myself that I will not be insane, I have become insane during those processes. And it could be over the stupidest things. It could be over the color of the paint. I thought it was going to be 2 shades different than what it is. And you'll blow a gasket over it. It wasn't worth blowing a gasket over. But it happens. Yep. So, but most people they don't have the wherewithal to realize that this is a marathon. You are not running a sprint. And unless you're going to train for that marathon and do it the right way, deal with a general contractor and pick one that that will hold your hand. They'll pat you on the shoulder when insanity comes, and they won't be sticking a pitchfork at you because you did go insane, because they knew it was going to be part of the deal. And you'll be happy in the end. So, I want to deal with a misconception here. So there's this misconception out there that I'm going to put up a Barndominium because it's going to be half the price of a stick frame building. Okay, let's look at this thing here. Now, is insulation going to be cheaper? No. Is electrical being cheaper? No, it takes the same wiring, takes the same outlets, same electrician, or you did it yourself, but it takes all the same pieces. Plumbing, all the same pieces. Drywall, all the same pieces, all the same cabinets, all the same countertops, all the same floor coverings. There is not some magical Barndo card that you can play that makes any of these things less expensive.
I was hoping you had a Barndo card. I was going to get one. So we can make people way happier if we had that.
Yeah, no, I can give them the get out of Barndo free card. But that's, yes, there are some savings, at least in post frame, in doing a Barndominium as opposed to stick frame, but it's because of the inherent economies of post frame construction. And it's not going to save you 50%. It might save you 10%, maybe. It's going to depend upon what you're building and how you approach the foundation. If you're going to do continuous footings and foundations, it's going to take away some of the upfront savings of post frame, even though over the long haul, because you're building was so much more efficient to heat and cool, you're going to make it up over the life of the building by picking post frame. But no, it's not going to make it all that, mystery cheaper to start with.
Right. Yeah, that we deal with that on a daily basis. I think everybody in the industry does. And to make it worse, you have stuff out there that's like Barndominium's under $100,000, and you click on it, and it's like,
what a riot!
It's showing, the homes from Yellowstone, like like these mountain mansions, and they're like, what do you think of this home under $100,000?
Yeah, yeah, right.
You bought it at auction? Like, how did you get that thing?
Actually, it was under $100,000 when they ordered it from the Sears and Roebuck catalog 110 years ago, and the rail car showed up on the siding there, and then you could do it.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Barndo Show podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this content, hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and then be sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms at the Barndo Co. Super simple to find us. And then when you're ready to dive in a little more, maybe look around some of our available floor plan options, or take a look at the gallery of our work, or maybe you're ready to connect with our team and explore what it looks like to build your dream barndominium, you can visit us online at thebarndoco.com.